Yes,
You
absolutely.
did a lot of homework on this one. I'm very impressed.
Well, you know, I had a lot of documentation sent to me, and then other things were sent to me, and other comments were sent to me, and so I want to make sure we have it right. I don't like to get a story wrong, and I think we got it wrong partially yesterday. And Shelly Ragle is in studio to correct it, and I'm referring to the
Pardon me a
land
second.
purchase.
Shreveport Public Assembly and Recreation Director.
Wow.
Is there anything beyond that, although as though that were not enough for you to do?
That is plenty. Thank you.
Queen of SPAR. How's that? We like that. The purchase of land, the old Deanna Produce building next to the Hilton Hotel, for $466,000. How did that come about? I know we've been working on that for a long time, and finally the price got right. Is that what happened?
So, as you know, you may know, I wasn't part of this, but when we were building the convention center, we actually negotiated on this property, and the owners just would never make the price in line with the appraisal. Mm-hmm. So as time went on,
In other words, it was too high.
Yes,
the seller just wanted a little bit more.
We were building the convention center.
We had heard about $750,000. Is that in the ballpark?
More.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Maybe over $1 million at the beginning.
Wow.
So the negotiations have been going on a long time. So we kind of let it go for many years. As you know, we've talked about this often. The 1996 bond issue had a project to acquire land along Cross Bayou, and it was to acquire land for the future development of a park. Mm-hmm. So we've been acquiring that land. I have a map, not that people on the radio can see that, but there really are just two pieces other than the scrapyard, which is a whole project in itself. So I've been instructed over the years to continue just to purchase property as it became available. This piece in 17, well, actually, yeah, in 17.
Excuse me just a second. I don't want to throw off your rhythm here.
Okay.
But you said we've been instructed to acquire the land, the city. What is the long-term purpose of the city acquiring all the Cross Bayou and or riverfront land?
I think that, originally in 1996, people wanted to see the linear green space that we have along the river continue down Cross Bayou. I think our community continues to want to see Cross Bayou developed. And because it's it would be water that you could have recreation in. The Red River really is not the place to take your kayak or, swim,
ski
anything, because it's, the rapid movement of the river. And I think Cross Bayou has been attractive to our community. Like I said, went to work for the city in 1996, actually. And that's when, people were dying to have Cross Bayou.
I guess my point was that the purpose of all this being purchased or attempted to purchase over the years isn't some great big scheme. Scheme is too strong a word, and it sounds sort of malevolent and or Machiavellian. It's not some big plan to down the line, and then we can sell it to a developer for $1 zillion.
No, not at all. Mm-hmm. It was to do the reason we had been purchasing property was to do exactly what the voters asked us to do in 1996.
The pieces you go out and buy, are you taking these? There's been criticism from council members that, we just went and did it and we didn't notify the council. Has that been standard procedure?
Yes, ma'am. Every budget, there's a project in there, and it identifies it as River Park Extension. Says to buy land on the Cross Bayou. It's part of our capital budget. It's in there every year, and so we're budgeted to do this work, to do this. This actually started. These negotiations started back up in 2017 because the Hilton came to us, which has been a very successful hotel. It's our one of non-casino full service hotels downtown, and said this building is becoming a nuisance. People are when people come to visit, the vagrancy.
Talking about the Deanna building now.
Yes, and if you've driven by it, you'd see why. And so part of it that during that administration was, let's restart these negotiations because it might be a good parking lot in the short term. So we were given email instructions to begin that again for that purpose.
From the mayor?
From the CAO at the time.
Okay, all right.
So we began the negotiations again. That's when we got a new a new appraisal.
That was 2017?
Yes.
Is this latest appraisal. And it came in at what, Shelly?
466.
Okay.
And so we began negotiations, and they were still thinking that the property, and you've got to remember a lot of the properties in downtown are not just one owner. They've been passed down, so now you have, multiple family members that you're having to get everybody to agree on. I can't tell you for sure, but we run into that a lot.
More complex than one might think.
Yeah, like going to buy a house and you're dealing with one owner.
There's been a little criticism that the appraisal is 2 years old, that we should have done a more recent appraisal, maybe could have gotten it for even cheaper. Your thoughts on that, and is that required?
We were under negotiations with that appraisal with them. We've been in negotiating since 17. We never stopped. It would back and forth and back and forth. And, you'd give it a few months to see if maybe they'd come around, because we just, number one, we can't buy above appraised value.
Or Aunt Susie says yes. Or, right.
Right. And so that was just going on. We did at some point before we thought we were getting closer, we called the appraiser and he said, no conditions have changed, that we did talk through it with our appraiser. And so we felt comfortable with the 17 appraisal. We felt like we were negotiating in good faith using that appraisal. And that's kind of how it all went. And finally they said, okay, we'll take it. It was finally. And
At some point, isn't the council notified? I mean, are they notified of these land unless they ask? I guess is that where it kind of goes?
Right. And if you when you look in the budget book, like I said, it's there every year. Not only for that, but like when we're acquiring land for Shreveport Common, we put in the budget book that common land acquisition, and that's what we'd be doing with it. And we moved on and bought several pieces of property, as you know, and what's called the Shreveport Common, eventually for the Caddo Common Park. So we're not required, and we're not normally
all the papers
taking.
that get signed, is it normally just the mayor's signature as the vendee and or
Yes.
representative of the city?
Yes.
Okay.
The 1996 bond issue. How much of that $5 million now is left?
About 2.8. I brought that.
Minus this 466?
No.
So still 2.8. Mm-hmm. That is another thing that I struggle with, and you're grinning. How
So
can
am
we,
I, as a matter
How
of
can
fact.
we go 25 years and not do what we promised the voters that we would do?
I think you and I talked about this the last time I was on. We have been doing it. It has been a very slow process, and I can show you the map, and you can see that we've pretty much purchased everything that we can. Many pieces were adjudicated, so either the city had to seize their interest. There's all kinds of steps. Luckily, we have laws that protect landowners. Mm-hmm. So when we start seizing, it takes months and months to do that. You have to go to court to do it. So there was lots of things going on. We've bought everything that we can, except one piece that belongs to KCS and the scrapyard.
So what do you do with the rest of the money then? Can you reallocate it to build my park?
Yes, the
we
city
talk-
council could decide what to do with that balance.
It doesn't have to go back to the voters to reallocate
My
bond money.
understanding is you have to have a public hearing in front of the city council, and the city council can then, hear from voters there, and then they could reallocate the money if they wanted to.
Okay, Shelly, can you hang on? Because I've got
Let
some
me ask you
DEQ
this
questions.
quickly before we go
Okay.
to break, because this is where you and I sort of butt heads on this one.
Mm-hmm.
The way I see that 96 bond issue is, here's some money to buy some land. But it doesn't say anything in the bond issue about it includes money to build the park.
That's correct.
But don't get my panties going. In 25,
I'm trying not to, I swear to
in
God.
25 years, you could have gone to the Red River Waterway Commission. You could have gone to other places to get the money to build the park. Am I right?
That I do not
We went to the Red River Waterway Commission to build a dog park.
That I don't dispute.
We did not.
What always gets
You did not, right?
What always gets you worked up is the wording of the 96 bond issue.
Yes.
And I say the way it's worded is we're going to buy the land, and down the line we're going to put it's like
Imagine how this town would feel if in November we passed the money for the substations and we went and acquired all the land for these police substations and then said, Well, you know, it was to acquire land for substations. It wasn't to build them.
God, I wanted
You
to
sure
end this.
pitched me a substation.
I wanted to end this segment so peacefully.
You pitched it fast and inside that you
What
were
if
going to build
said-
it.
What if it said we're going to build land for substations? Now we've got the land. Now we've got to come up with the money for the actual
when you came
structures.
to my neighborhood groups, you told me you were going to have substations. You follow me?
Did you read this? Did you read the bond issue?
Of course I read the bond. I've read
Evidently-
that bond issue a zillion times
We got to
now.
go.